Welcome everybody to episode, well, I guess it would count as episode 28 of the podcast. And it's a very special episode today. We have another case study from one of our very successful users of the Mandarin blueprint method, Mr. Julian Laffey. Welcome, Julian.
Thank you, Luke.
So why don't you jump in and just tell us, who you are. Give us a quick introduction.
Yeah, no problem. My name's Julian. I'm 43 years old. I'm a dad of a couple of teenagers. I live a bit outside of Melbourne, which is a major city in Australia. And I've been studying Chinese on and off for about 2 years now, trying to fit it in between, family, relationship, full-time work obligations.
Brilliant. So what made you, this is always the most interesting question is like, why did you decide to study Chinese exactly?
Well, I work in IT and I work at a university. I'm a programmer and data engineer. And a couple of years back, they needed someone to go to China to teach programming for 2 weeks. And it was a last minute thing. And I said to my partner, they want me to go to China, but I can't do it. And she said, yes, you can. We can sort this out. We can do it. And I was sent to a city called Shaoguan in the Guangdong province.
Right.
Speak Cantonese, not Mandarin. But I found the experience so fascinating. And China is such a strange and different place that when I came back home, I thought I really want to be able to know more about China and reckon I can give this language a bit of a bash. So I did. I got started with private lessons and various apps and different things and did that for a little while. It was, I found that I was getting stuck and frustrated. I'm sure you're well aware of the sorts of things that was happening. Then I found your course at the beginning of this year.
Brilliant. How did you find us? You just stumbled on us in Google search, or?
I was worried you'd ask me that. I honestly can't remember where I saw it. As you know, there's a million Chinese, ways to learn Chinese out there. And I saw it listed somewhere and something made me go and have a look at it. And then I saw the testimonials and thought, okay, this isn't like all the other things that are being offered out there. I'll give it a try. And it ended up being something that really clicked with me as a process, as a method, as something that could actually get serious results, which for me it has.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, and I really want to get into that as well, specifically because we've had a good few people now get to a decent way through the course, and everyone's got interesting takes on it and interesting things to say. So I really want to get into that. But first of all, I want to just ask, so you sort of more of the. It's not necessarily you're doing it for your CV or something like that. It's more of would you say it's more of a personal interest?
Yeah, just sometimes I take an interest in things and I want to sort of figure out if I can do it. I've learned how to juggle. I've learned how to ride a unicycle. I've learned how to play various musical instruments. None of those, I think, compare to the challenge of learning Chinese, which is a much bigger undertaking than I first thought. When I started, I thought it was something I could take an interest in, like, tying knots or World War II history or something, and it really isn't. It soaks up all my extra time that I don't have working and taking care of my family. Sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, that's it. That's about it. It's like you're a programmer, is it? Is that what you do?
Computer programmer, yeah.
So you do so you're a bit of a, because we've had a few engineers, and a lot of the people that end up being quite successful they not necessarily engineers, but they have that sort of brain, and they like Sydney. I don't know if you remember Sydney Green, a recent case study we had. He's very academic, but he loves puzzles. He loves cracking codes. He loves a difficult challenge, and Mandarin is definitely that, isn't it?
There certainly is something about the puzzle that seems to fit in with Mandarin Blueprint. You've got this system. It's like you're learning the world's hardest crossword or something.
Yeah.
You've got thousands of letters to choose from. You've got to figure out how to place them all. So perhaps there is something that appeals to the puzzler, to the programmer, to the engineer, to the person who likes to take things apart and put them back together again. But my end goals, I don't know. I've got some Chinese students, had some Chinese students. So being able to chat with them would be nice. I'm not there yet. Being able to show off in Chinese restaurants, I think, really. Being able to impress people in a Chinese restaurant. What loftier goal is there than that, I think?
Absolutely.
It's very exhilarating to be able to just get a few things out of a Chinese restaurant and be understood. I do find that very rewarding.
And that sort of answers my. Next question for you was going to be, so what would it mean for you personally if you succeed in learning Chinese? You know, what would it like? And what? Well, first of all, what would be success to you? Would it just be being able to order in a restaurant? Would that just be like? And obviously there'll be lots of successes along the way, but what's your loftiest goal for Chinese? Like, where do you see yourself going? Do you see yourself going the whole way, reading novels and things like that in Chinese and speaking with advanced fluency?
I definitely want to be able to read. Not because that was an initial goal, but now thanks to Mandarin Blueprint, I realise I can read, like just a little bit. I've got some of the. I picked up the Mandarin Companion series. I think
they're
it is.
Great.
Yeah, their adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working my way slowly through that. But because of Mandarin Blueprint, I can follow the book.
Oh, brilliant.
And I never expected this to be something that I'd be able to do, but it's just this astonishing feeling of being able to read Chinese after 4 or 5 months of Mandarin Blueprint. It's just fantastic. So if I can keep reading, yeah, I definitely will.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that is, I mean, I personally had a similar thing. I used to read all the time as a kid, and I stopped reading sometime through university, actually, funnily enough. And then I got back into reading because of Chinese, because it's like this whole rediscovery. You know, and it's different to read things in Chinese as well. I guess maybe not because it's the language itself necessarily, but possibly, but more like because you're paying such close attention, and they describe things in a slightly different way, I guess. And like I reread Game of Thrones recently, just the first book. Not recently, actually. It was about a year ago now, actually. But it was I noticed so many different things that I never noticed before, and the story sort of it was reinvigorated for me. So it was so I'm now a reader again, thanks to Chinese as well.
Wow, okay. Well, look, I'd love to be able to say the same, to be able to read something at that level. I know it's a step at a time, but and I imagine, I'm not there yet, but I imagine that'll help me with conversational Chinese later, that I'll just be able to understand what's being said to me so much better. At the moment, real-time conversation in Chinese with me is hard. It's really hard. My listening comprehension is way down, and I've got to put in a lot more effort to build that up. But I know what I need to do. But what I'm doing at the moment is just powering through the characters. I'm having so much fun with that. Mm-hmm. And, I don't want to stop till I've done all the characters. Your course, at least, is provided.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Don't worry about it being hard. It's hard for me sometimes too if I'm tired or hungover, or or if I'm talking to a certain person with a lot of pressure, like my fiance's parents or something. I want to sound better, and I'll end up like I'll still stumble over stuff and forget easy things because of the pressure of the moment. So it's not just your Mandarin skill that comes into it. It's also loads of other factors when speaking. Which is why writing is so good. Just as an aside, writing is a fantastic way of getting that output without without relying so much on how you're feeling in the moment or the external pressures. Writing is fantastic.
Well, I suppose, like reading, you can do it at your own pace. There isn't that pressure cooker environment of someone saying something to you, and then you've got to try and process what they said and get it back out of your mouth and do all the translation on the fly. With writing, I do write as part of my practice for when I'm going through my Anki decks for all the characters. Getting good at writing, like the calligraphy, isn't really a goal of mine. Mm-hmm. If I can bash out the characters and I can roughly tell what they are, I might get the stroke wrong or the stroke direction. Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. I try and get it right, but if I get it wrong, I'm not too fast.
Yeah, as long as it's legible, you're fine. I'm the same. In fact, I'd say I'm relatively lazy in that respect. But then again, being lazy is the reason why we made this course in the first place. It was like, well, there's got to be an easier way. I can't be bothered with all this, writing out stuff a million times. So let's find shortcuts. Absolutely. So okay, so we've got an idea of like your goals and where you'd like to be. That's brilliant. And I personally think that as Phil and I were talking about this recently, is the people that we find that have had relatively the most success so far, or have learnt the fastest, aren't necessarily people that are doing it for any sort of external motivation. Like I don't know, they want to pass the HSK6 to get into a certain school or to have a certain job, which are fine goals. But the people that just genuinely have an interest in the language and just fancy unlocking, cracking this code, those sorts of people seem to be some of the most successful on the course so far, like yourself. So.
Well, you'd have to be, wouldn't you, to tackle a language like Chinese? Imagine someone saying you've got to go learn this language and there's no alphabet, there's the tone system. No wonder people get fed up and give up on it. And unless you've got that real desire to do it, I can see why.
Yeah, and a lot of people who are just in China, that's a big one as well. People that gives them the motivation. They're in China, so there's that motivation all around you all the time to keep going. So that's another factor that keeps pushing you. But yeah, you've got to have an interest. And people often will start off with a very practical reason for learning Chinese, and then it will develop naturally. As long as they find the right methods that actually work, it will naturally develop into a passion anyway, because it is a beautiful language and it is fun. Especially if they've never learned another language as an adult. It's very cool. I can read another language, I can speak another language. It's very cool. Especially one that's seen as impossible.
Got this language. Well, this language as if it was developed on another planet. I mean, it's just got so little overlap with English. My partner's doing Italian, and she comes across a word like televisione, and I just put my head in my hands. Oh, you're kidding me? Do you realise how hard it is for me to do all this stuff in Chinese?
Yeah, but you're almost. I mean, what level are you at the moment? There's 36 levels at the moment on the course. What level have you got to?
I'm at about character 420, so level 28, I think.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that far. Brilliant. That's like.
Yeah, I've just picked up my speed a lot by adjusting my technique a bit. What I was doing was, and I don't know can I talk about Anki here?
Of course you can, yeah.
I had everything suspended in Anki, and I would try and do 2 characters a day on top of all my revision, and then I'd go through and unlock it. And what I've done in the last week, I've just unsuspended every card, and I let Anki tell me what's next, and I try and just get it all done, and I'm finding I'm getting it done, and I'm getting through the characters much, much faster now. So I wish I'd done that a long time ago.
So you've just sort of, so you've unsuspended all your Anki cards. This is very interesting. So you've unsuspended all your... Anki, by the way, for anyone listening that don't know what Anki is, it's just our flashcard software that we use. Not ours, we didn't make it, but it's the best flashcard software out there once you know how to use it. So everything is, at the moment, until we create our own platform, everything's on Anki, all the flashcards and stuff. So you've just unsuspended everything, and you've set yourself a limit of how many new characters a day at the moment?
There's the limit that's always in there, which is I think 20.
20.
But the other day I hit it, so I changed it to bulked it up to 30. And a lot of them are variations on the characters of word combinations that you've already done. So it's fine. It's quite doable. In about 3/4 of an hour to an hour a day, I find I can get through it all.
Fantastic. All right, brilliant. That's we'll maybe come back to that in just a little bit, because that's really good progress. There's a lot of aspects to our method, right? So we've got the pronunciation mastery, which is sort of a separate course that we're now making part of the main course, and we've got the character learning method, the hands are moving method, and then learning words in compound words, and then that's sort of a small part of it, and then sentences and phrases and building up. So even within those parts, there's lots of parts of those as well. So what would you say, if you can pinpoint 3 things about Mandarin Blueprint that sort of have made the biggest impact for you? What would you say that they would be?
I've been a little bit lazy with sort of the sentences, the stories, the opinion pieces. They sometimes fall back. I've got to go back and make sure I do them. I'm having so much fun with the characters that I go and do those first, because I can't wait to do them. Yeah. Look, a couple of things. I really like the way with this course that you put characters right up front. You say, the Chinese characters, it's the core of the language. You've got to deal with them. Let's deal with them from day one. What I was doing before, I've got a teacher in China. I still do. Every 2 weeks I have a lesson with her. She started me off with textbooks, and we start off with pinyin and slowly introduce the characters, and then slowly sort of phase in characters and phase out the pinyin. And it's like the characters are treated like they're radioactive or something. Yeah, it's so hard that Westerners won't be able to cope with it. And I kind of get that, because I was doing the Anki repetition stuff, not with your method, just the Anki repetition of trying to memorize characters. And just making these really poor quality memories that weren't attached to anything. They're just these free floating ideas, and you try and come back to them later, and most of the time they're just gone. You've got words that sound just like other words, or nearly do. You've got characters that look just like other characters. And without a really good system, you're not going to be able to make those characters stick in your memory. And that's what this system is. So I really like the way that Mandarin Blueprint grasps the nettle, so to speak, of characters and says, right, let's do this. And it does it really, really well. An analogy, if I can draw an analogy, is that trying to remember by rote learning is like building with sand. And Mandarin Blueprint is like building with bricks. Each character has a really strong memory and story behind it. And once you've got it, you've got it. And when you see it written down, you know what it is, and it just returns to you, just in a way and with a quality that just wasn't possible before. In my opinion, it's a system that really works well for me, and obviously for a lot of your other customers as well.
Fantastic. So that would definitely be your main, the thing that sort of struck you about the system. That's great to hear. I mean, is there anything else, or is that the main thing? So you said you haven't properly gotten into the larger material yet, right? You're so focused on the characters, which a lot of people do, and I understand that completely.
No, I do the stories and things, but I sort of leave them till later because the characters are too much fun. I'm sort of 3 levels behind on the stories and opinion pieces than where I am with the characters. I slowly go through, and when I've done all my Anki for the day, I'll go back and think, right, okay, let's do a few of these stories and read them and try and understand them.
And how's that going in general, just out of interest? How's that going for you? Like when you're actually reading how are you finding your comprehension of the material at this point?
Good, yeah, really good. Sometimes I have to look up characters. I know you have the list of the characters that haven't been done yet. Often there's characters that you haven't listed that haven't been done, but that's fine. It takes a few seconds to look them up. You can glean the meaning of what's going on more or less. I try and understand a sentence, and I stick it into Google Translate and see what it says, which can often be gibberish anyway.
Absolutely.
But I always know by the end of it what the story was about, what the opinion piece was about. Yeah, no trouble there.
I can imagine though that being apprehensive about jumping into that, because it takes a little while to grasp the character method. First of all, I mean, for most people it does. It takes a little bit of practice. And it's like learning a little mini language to sort of grasp it. So once I can understand from your point of view, like once you've got that down, you don't want another thing that you don't, that's a big challenge. You want to just stick with what you know for a bit, and I can understand that. So a lot of people tend to follow that path, just like, let me just do the characters first, and then I'll go back and that's it's like do the have your dessert first kind of thing.
It is a bit, yeah. Maybe that's a little lazy. I don't know, but it's just.
It's not. I wouldn't say it's lazy. It's just a natural path that we all take. It's just like because reading, no matter how great you are at recognizing the individual words and the characters, everybody has to go through a period of looking at a sentence for a long time, and it's a blur, and you have to sort of slowly piece it together and build those neurons in your brain. There's no one on earth apart from those savants, that can just go straight from recognizing individual characters and words to just reading smoothly. There's a period of growth, and we've tried to make that as small as possible by, here's a sentence, here's a few sentences, here's a paragraph, slowly easing you into it. But even then, it's tough,
Yeah, but look, I am doing it. I am enjoying it. It's just I tend to leave it till later, and sometimes later doesn't come, so it falls behind a little bit. I find a long sentence challenging when you've got the sentences of with 20 characters in them.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and I go, oh, this is going to take a while.
Yeah.
But no, you get there. They're pitched about right, I reckon. They're just a bit ahead of where. Or they're sort of at where you need to be, and maybe it's a little bit ahead, so there's enough challenge there, so it's not too easy. But it sort of gives you a bit of a prompt to challenge yourself and get stuck in.
Right. So what would you say because let's focus mainly on the characters then. So
okay.
What or just in general, first of all, like what have you achieved so far with the method? So let's see if we can get quite specific, because you already mentioned what level you're at, so like in the course, but let's talk about what you feel that you've achieved and what impact that's had on you at the moment.
Probably the main thing is just being able to read this adaptation of Emma. picked it up on Amazon. I'm reading it on the Kindle, and I can sit down of an evening and go through it. And it wasn't something I ever expected to be able to do, but it's tremendously satisfying to be able to read. I've got some of my Chinese students on. I'm friends with them on WeChat. I read through their posts as well, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at squiggles, which you didn't recognize. I mean, how long ago was it? You were at zero level?
2 years ago.
Right, and you started the Mandarin Blueprint when using the Mandarin Blueprint method?
Start of this year. Yep.
Right, because obviously we released it in January, so
yeah,
and it's June, the beginning of June now. Yeah,
but I didn't feel like I'd really started learning until I started Mandarin Blueprint.
So maybe I missed this earlier, but where were you in your level before you started? Did you know how to read any characters at that point? You said you had...
I could read some characters. I'd done my HSK1. Just sort of little conversational bits with my teacher, but I just was having so much trouble making stuff stick. We'd have a lesson, and she'd say, "Okay, here are some new words." The next lesson, she'd say, "Oh no, we covered this word last time. Don't you remember?" I go, "Well, no, I don't remember." And I've been practicing, and I don't remember. They just vanish.
Like you say, like that analogy is really good. It's like building on sand. And they just throw more sand on, and the sand's like rolling down and falling into a ditch.
It washes away, and it
washes away, exactly. And then you put more sand on every time. Maybe some like your pile's getting a bit bigger.
You're getting somewhere, yeah. You're making progress, but God, the frustration with it,
frustration, demotivate. I mean, like,
yeah.
Have you watched our webinar, or there was a video? We did a launch sequence as well, where we had one of the videos was me talking about all my failures, my journey with Chinese. Did you watch that one?
I've watched most of your videos. I'm sure. I think you talked about going to university and then.
Oh yeah, going to university for one semester, and I joined. I learned in a similar way to you. I learned 5,000 words, or just a lot of words, through Memrise, which I don't know if you've heard of. Memrise.com.
I've heard of Memrise, but I haven't used it. Yeah.
Right. It's no matter what, it looks much nicer than Anki, but it's the same thing. It's just digital flashcards essentially. And without any other foundation, it's not very useful. And it's very useful if you use it correctly. Don't get me wrong; it's a great thing. But it's like, I was just shoving this information into my head, and it was falling in one ear and out the other.
I had a similar thing. I was making progress, but it was very slow and not very rewarding. And had I known how long it was going to take me that way to make serious progress, I probably would have given up. So thank God for finding this method, because it's really rejuvenated my interest in this language.
Yeah, I'm quite jealous. I'm not saying like I'm quite jealous that you're. I'm just saying that I miss that. I'd love to be in your shoes of like going from, because it happened for me in Phil too, but it was just more, I guess, slower because we were figuring it out on the way. But yeah, just like that feeling of, because I remember that slightly going from looking at individual squiggles, and you're reading a story by looking at squiggles that you didn't recognize 4 months ago. Like that must be such a cool feeling, Yeah,
it's this alien language.
Because it's still the same as reading a normal novel in English or your native language. It's like you're creating this images in your head based on looking at squiggles, but it's just crazy squiggles that and it's just such a great feeling.
It is a great feeling, yeah. Something else about the course. You asked me what I liked about the course. I think that's what you're asking me. But from early on, I've had a great sense of you and Phil keeping me company along the way. Right. And that's actually worth a lot, because it's hard work, and it can be frustrating at times and demoralizing at times. And I feel like I've got a couple of people who've been there, who understand what it's like, who know how difficult it is. They're with me along the way, even if I hadn't directly interacted with either of you. Just the videos and the podcasts and all the little congratulations along the way, keep going, don't give up. The little messages you get as you're completing each level, and it really means a lot. When I talk to my Chinese teacher, she's obviously gone to a lot of trouble to learn English, but when she would ask me, say, no, we talked about this word last week, I think she doesn't quite get how hard it is to remember the Chinese character that I a week ago. It's not just going to stick. I'm not going to see it one week and then remember it the next. It just doesn't work that way.
No.
You've got to have a system.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, because it makes us happy because we put one of the key things that we want to use as a brand or a company or whatever is the fact that we've done it ourselves. So we get it. That's when we used to teach it live, because that's what we used to do that when we back in the day, like a few years back, to survive. We'd teach the locals here, and we'd have I used to do the clicky sort of screen presentations for the whole course. It was a very long thing, and we used to have a picture that came up in our demos. It was like a Bitmoji of me and Phil just like on the floor like this, like, and it was like, we get the struggle, you know. But it was that. I'm hoping that's going to be something that will set us apart, and it's really good to hear from you that helps. Like not just Phil being great at writing emails and us doing the podcast together and all this sort of stuff, but just generally having someone that's done it and knows the struggle, rather than being like, yeah, what do you mean you haven't learned that character? Come on, get it together.
Yeah. Catch up. Where are you? It's
only 2,500 more to go.
Sorry,
only 2,500 more characters to go. Come on.
Yeah, but that sense of it being insurmountable, I think. I still know I've got a lot of work ahead of me, years of work ahead of me, but I can see now how to get there. The path is clear. It's obvious how to get there. It's just slow, but with a process like this long, and a process like this that I know I'm going to enjoy on some level, that's fun. I'm happy to do it. Now I've got this method. I can apply this beyond the 590 characters, whatever it is, with the first batch. I know you're hard at work at batch number 2, so
we are.
It'll be a race. We'll see who gets there first.
Yeah, we're like, oh no, he's on 420. Oh no, he's on 460. Quick. You know. Yeah, but that's great to hear, man. That really helps us, because Phil's also doing a bunch more work. I don't know if he's announced this at all recently, but he's currently doing more work on writing out emails for level, like, because we feel bad that we do there's so many videos. There's like, you know, in the first 105 characters, like the first 12 levels, there's 300 videos. And then because of, you know, time and financial constraints, we had to just stop there. And there's like very few videos after that. So, and we're worried that people will start to feel like we've left them in the lurch, as we say. And so we want to basically make sure that we have loads of really good communication, not just after every level after that, but after every lesson, really. You want to have or every few lessons, on emails sent out saying, hey, you know, just checking in on you and things like that.
Yeah. Look, I know what you mean, but I sort of had the feeling of, after the video stopped, it's like, okay, we're taking the training wheels off, you know, you can do this. We're here if you need us. Yeah, off you go on your bike. You know, you can make this happen.
Great message.
I really
on your bike.
Like, I really like that that you take away the English at one point, and like in the stories. Well, even with the stories and the opinion pieces, you take away the opinion. So again, that primary focus on the characters. It's like, this is what Chinese is all about. You can't be relying on that other stuff. I remember when I very, very, very first started learning Chinese, I sort of thought, this is pretty hard. Maybe I can do it without the characters. I've seen pinyin on road signs. There's probably pinyin in novels and pinyin in here and there and whatever. And I could sort of, and it's just a complete fantasy. I mean, it's nonsense. It's not happening. The Chinese is the characters. That is the language. And the new guys hit it full tilt. It was the same with tones. I thought, maybe I can figure out the tones later. Just try and learn the initials and the finals and tack on the tones later. Again, that's not going to happen. It's simply not going to work. You've got to deal with the tones from day one. Or you're not going to be understood, and you're not going to understand it.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been told several times by different learners throughout my journey that tones don't matter. You know, it's not important. They get it. It's like, yeah, if you have very limited vocabulary, then yeah. If you want to take it to the next level, if you want to be an advanced speaker or reader or whatever it is, you need those tones, you need those characters. Yeah. And speaking of that, you haven't mentioned the. Did you take the pronunciation course as well?
I have done a pronunciation course. I haven't done as much. I'm not even sure if I made it to the end of that one.
Well, you already had a foundation by that point anyway, didn't you? So maybe you didn't need it as much as everyone else.
I still found it really, really valuable though. My teacher, my Chinese teacher, didn't really and still doesn't focus on pronunciation with me.
Mm.
If I give it a go, she's happy with that. She doesn't really pick me up on, the difficult initials and the tones. And she sort of, I think her attitude is don't go too hard on them,
Sure.
let them try and we'll work with whatever. She seems to understand me more or less.
Yeah, yeah. And again, that's path of least resistance. And like I said, I was talking about it earlier, we all tend to just follow an easier path of what we're used to. And it's hard to teach pronunciation if you don't know it in detail. And rather than just saying, try again, no. And then try again, awkward nod, fine. All right, then next one.
Well, it must be hard for someone trying to teach someone Chinese, knowing how high the dropout rate is. I think in high schools in my state, it's non-Chinese people learning Mandarin, something like a 95% dropout rate. It's just enormous.
Yeah, and it's all in the beginner stage. Like very few people, once they're past the hump, are over the hump of Chinese, and it's a big hump in Chinese. But once you're past it, they tend to stick with it to a large degree. But yeah, of the beginners, huge dropout rates, and it's because, well, we know why, right? It's because they don't know how to teach the tough stuff, and in academia, they have to teach the tough stuff, and the way they teach it scares people away, understandably. So,
yeah. Well, you're already doing this difficult thing, so who wants to be miserable while they're doing it?
Exactly. Like at least give them the illusion of progress.
Yeah.
I completely get it. Like me and Phil said in those videos that I talked about earlier, we also said at one point, like, hey, I feel like we're trashing universities here and schools and Chinese teachers and stuff. We don't want to do that because we get why they are like that. We get why that the system is so bad and why the results are so poor. It's because of they don't have the methods. They don't know how to teach it. They haven't developed it. And again, I'm reminded of Sydney again. Sydney Green, he's a professor himself, and he's like, this is not academic, but it works, So they're very
academics would hate it too.
I'll tell you.
Sorry, you go.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was wondering down the track. I imagine someone will do an academic study on a system, on your system, and compare it to, traditional rote learning of Chinese. And I'd be very interested to see what the results would be, but I imagine that'd be a few years away before anyone could do that.
Yeah, I think we have to get it out there a bit more first. But I'll be interested in that. Funny enough, you mentioned that, right? You heard of the Heisig method, James Heisig? And
I have heard of it from your blog, but I don't know your podcast. I'm not really familiar with it.
Right. Well, it's a method that we developed our character order based on, and the style of the Heisig. There's lots of good things about it, lots of things that people thought it was lacking, but generally it's a fantastic starting point if you want to learn. It's not a bad way of learning characters. Anyway, I actually remember after Phil and I started developing this in our own way, and we got all sorts of we started basically incorporating it to the way it is today, like actors and all this stuff. Movie scenes and learning the pronunciation at the same time as the everything else. And I emailed them and I was like, what do you think about this? And he got back to me and he said it won't work. And I was like, but it does though. I learned 3,000 characters in 6 months teaching myself it. And I learned using his 2 books because I didn't have our own order at that point, and I learned 3,000 characters using both of the Heisig books, but applying this method to it instead. And he just said, nah, but it won't work, though. And I was like, I don't know how to... Okay, fine. So thanks anyway, though,
Wouldn't you be annoyed, though, if you've, presumably spent years on this method and a couple of young upstarts come along and say, well, we've done it, but we've done it better. Yeah. I'm sure you've got a question there about skepticism and, was I skeptical at the beginning?
That's exactly what I was going to go into, yeah. What were you that's like the next thing, like after all, what were you skeptical about?
Well, the answer is, of course, I was skeptical. You've got, you see all these Chinese apps and methods and sites, whatever. They all promise the world. They all do. And a couple of guys who aren't even Chinese have learnt some method, and they've improved on everything else. Come on, there's no way. It's ridiculous. The arrogance, they can't have, but they have, and it's remarkable. I suppose something like this has come about because Chinese almost stands alone as a language without an alphabet.
Almost, yeah. There's very few of them. I mean, it's like Chinese, Japanese, Arabic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Japanese has sort of a semi-phonetic system, doesn't it, which uses characters as well.
That's right.
So there is something about Chinese that makes it stand alone, I think, as an area of study. Just waiting for someone to bring in these new techniques. Like you've said yourself, these things have been around, or the memory techniques, the movie making, all these things. But what you've done is assembled them in this unique way that no one's really done before, and terrific results. And you've honed it. Obviously, you've honed it with your students.
Oh, for way too long. Phil was getting annoyed at me because I was just because I've said this a couple of times before. We actually, so it has several areas of inspiration. It wasn't like we made it up from scratch, but we did hone it and recreated it and changed a lot about it to make it more as digestible as humanly possible to the layman, to an average person with, just not necessarily even a smart person, just a person that, interested in the language, I can just learn Chinese. So yeah, we spent hundreds of hours doing that. And at one point, Phil was just like, can we get going? And actually, I was like, no, more. We need to test it more. It's not 100%, it was that old.
I'd like to wave a flag for all the people, because I know you've had a few superstars on your podcast, but I'd like to wave a flag for the people whose memory isn't great. I'm not great at studying. I get distracted. I do have trouble remembering things, but I just find this system works really well. My progress might not be as stellar as some people, but I promise the listeners out there that even if you feel you're mediocre in a lot of these areas, you will still succeed with this system if you stick at it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got a full life, right? It's not like this is your full-time job studying Chinese, is it?
Oh, I'd love to put more time into it, but I just don't have it.
You said you put in about 45 minutes a day at the moment?
45 minutes to an hour, yeah.
That's really good. I mean, considering you've got a life,
Yeah, well, the thing I find too is I'm just tired at the end of the day, and I haven't got the mental energy necessarily to put into Chinese after work and kids and all that. So I get up early, get up and do it in the morning, and find that works really well.
Yeah. I mean, if you make small changes, because that's another thing. I always felt a bit bad, and we were very trepidatious about, very careful about saying how long it's going to take you and how much time you should put in per day, because Phil and I were figuring all this stuff out and learning Chinese while I was a part-time English teacher in China, and Phil was a jazz drummer mainly and did a few other things, but that was mainly it. So I didn't want to be like, hey, you can do this in with this time, because it's not everyone's like that. Everyone has like a full-time job, and a lot of people have kids. But I've been absolutely amazed to find that, again, our most successful clients are the people, like, not always, but generally, there's people with full lives. People with one of our best, John's McSweeney, who's in our guest videos. He was. We use him as an example a lot because he made it faster than anyone we knew from our live course. We had hundreds of people take it, and he was the fastest by far. And he had 3 kids, at least 2 boys, I think, a dog, full-time job, overtime, and a wife, of course, and all this stuff, and he smashed it. It's because, like you, he tweaked little things during his day. I'll try in the morning instead, or I'll get up half an hour early and then do it in my lunch break, or do it listen in the car, and again, I didn't want to say that either. I didn't want to presume to tell people with far more responsibilities than me to go and be like, oh, you can do it. Just make some changes to your life. I couldn't. It was hard for me to do that. But I'm glad we've got someone like yourself and many others like you who can say, hey guys, there's no excuses.
Oh, there really isn't. It's so much fun. You won't need excuses. I can't wait to get the phone first thing in the morning. I drive my partner up the wall because I'm reaching for the phone and doing my Yankee decks as soon as I wake up, because I just can't wait to get it done. It's a terrific way to learn. If you want to learn and it's fun and you can't wait to learn, what better way to learn something?
Mm.
And of course, there's frustrations along the way. And, when I listen to people speaking Chinese, oh my God, my listening comprehension has got a long way to go. But I know because of this technique that I'll be able to get there.
Fantastic. Was there anything else specific that you were skeptical about? I can't remember how much detail you went into on that. Like, if you actually mentioned something.
I don't know if I could say much about whether I'll be successful yet, because I'm not. I don't think I'm there yet. Yeah. No, I'll know more when I've finished. Ask me in a couple of years, and then I'll be able to tell you a bit more about whether any skepticism was warranted. But
right.
So far I'm thrilled. Absolutely thrilled to bits. And if anyone asked me about learning Chinese, I wouldn't recommend this course. I'd insist upon it. Because anything else is just a waste of your time. It really is. You'll hate it and it'll take forever.
Well, I didn't say that. All right. I'm not. You said it.
All my words. It's just, I don't see why you do it any other way. As a Westerner, by the time you're an adult, you've seen hundreds of movies, maybe thousands. You've got all this stuff in your head already, and you can use that. You can cheat. You can leverage that to learn this weird language. Absolutely possible. Totally doable. And loads of fun.
Well, I mean, you kind of answered my next question as well, which is, would you recommend it and why? So
yes and yes. Yeah, that's why.
Well, I kind of think that's a great sort of moment to leave it, really. I mean, we've mentioned everything that that's fantastic. It's so good to hear, because a lot of this stuff for us has been guesswork based on our own experience, right? A lot of this stuff, like if I was a beginner, this would work for me. So let's do it this way. Let's introduce sentences here. Let's build those sentences up into paragraphs here. Let's maybe introduce a story now. Let's take away the English. All these decisions have been made by Phil and I, just sort of on trying to put ourselves in your shoes as much as we can. And it's so good to see that it's kind of working out.
So you're so receptive to feedback. You're so welcoming of people's suggestions and ideas that it's getting honed into something really worthwhile, really lovely. And I think that your attitude is what really makes this work. Is that you're not putting this together to snare a few bucks from language learners. You're putting this together because you really believe in what you're doing and you're really prepared to put in the time to make it as good as it can be.
Thank you so much, Julian. I really appreciate it. And if anyone else, if you get past level 12, you should receive an email to invite you to do a case study similar to this. So if you get that, get in touch. And we would love to have a follow-up with you as well in 2 or 3 months. Is just to keep you...
I think that'd be a great idea. I don't keep track of my progress. Like, I don't keep a journal of how I'm feeling or thinking about it. I just keep plugging on with it. But I think that'd be interesting. It's a good idea.
All right. Well, we'll book you in and we'll do that. So, all right. Thanks very much. And we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, Luke.